Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. We talk about different categories of wellness and seeking balance between them. There's overview info on our website, letsbewelltogether.com.
This is episode 45.
We hope our territorial acknowledgement improves allyship with Indigenous people within a reconciliation process. We're on the Haldeman Tract, located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We acknowledge the presence and traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land. We are back with Let's Be Well Together podcast, and it's John and Sammy. Hi, Sammy.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's been a tough week, as you know, but
yes,
I'm getting through it, especially with lots of support from friends and family. So,
yeah.
Anyway, you mentioned something about a social media post. So what's on your mind today?
Yeah. So there was this post that was going around all platforms of social media. It started on Twitter and then it started circulating through Instagram and TikTok. It's talking about basically the different amount of time you're spending throughout your life with different people. This was posted by @SawhillBloom. And where I found it on Instagram was Tank's Good News. So there's 6 graphs, and they kind of talk about all different times. And for me, I think like it hit me quite a bit because I think as a younger person, you don't always think about the limited time you have with each person in each aspect of your life. But I think it's something that we should always be thinking about because I think that would maybe change the way you react in different situations and scenarios, and you might approach things differently if you're thinking of the amount of time you have. So I thought it was something I've been holding for the past couple weeks because I'm just constantly thinking of it now.
I love it. Until you showed me this, I never thought about this.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, and not just the fact that, we're breaking down over the course of a lifetime how much time you're spending with family or friends or coworkers, but also if you then think about that, what are some takeaways? And I just love this. So maybe we could start just to, like we often do, just to make sure we cover our bases. Let's just go through all 6 and hit the bullet points. And why don't you start with the first one?
Yeah. So the first one is times spent with parents and siblings. Basically, the graph is showing that this time peaks in your childhood and starts to decline after the age of 20. The key takeaways, they say, is that time with your family is limited. Time with parents declines sharply after the age of 20. You may only see your loved ones a few more times. And at the bottom, it says prioritize and cherish every moment. So this time is limited. So just make sure that you're prioritizing it and making it a thing in your life.
Okay. And the second one is time spent with friends. And it peaks at age 18 and declines sharply to a low baseline. And the key takeaways are to embrace friendship breadth, but focus on depth. Cherish those who are with you through good times and bad. And that really speaks to me for sure, the and bad. Mm-hmm. The focus there, then, what they suggest is invest your energy in the healthy, meaningful friendships that last.
And the third one is time spent with partner. So this trends upwards until death. And the key takeaways are who you choose as a partner is the most important decision you'll ever make. Find someone you genuinely enjoy spending time with. And the key takeaway is never settle for less than love.
Wow, that's really meaningful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, the next one is time spent with children, if you have children. It peaks in your 30s and declines sharply thereafter. Time with your children is short. The magic years will fly by if you let them. Be present in every moment. The suggestion here is to slow down and embrace the sweetness that children bring to your life.
And the fifth one is time spent with coworkers. So this is steady during your prime working years from the age of 20 to 60. And the key lessons are you'll spend a lot of time at work. Who you choose to work with is one of the most important decisions you'll make. And kind of the main, again, emphasis on this graph is find work and coworkers that create energy in your life, which I think some people will fall behind on the coworkers side and they just love the job, but the coworkers and the energy of the workplace is also such an important thing.
It's something I hadn't focused on for much of my working life. Currently, I'm at a place where I just work with amazing people. And every day, I notice it every day. And it's now something that I've learned to really appreciate in the last 10 years or more, because it brings me energy and comfort. And I know that it can get me through the good times and the bad times, just like with friends. So that one's really important. And I think that one, you're right, is probably really overlooked.
Definitely.
And the last one, the sixth, is time spent alone. And I never really thought about that in the context of time spent with people. Some key lessons are to learn to embrace solitude, flex your boredom muscle regularly. The emphasis here is to find happiness and joy in the time you have to yourself. There will be a whole lot of it as you get older. I love that one too. Okay, so great. So we've covered them. So now maybe we won't have time to talk about all of them, but is there one that kind of you'd like to chat about?
Definitely. I think for me, the time spent with friends is something that's really, I think it's a big part of my life right now. And then as we can see in the graph, again, it says it peaks at the age of 18 and declines sharply to a low baseline. So I think I'm in that age where it is still pretty high. My view on friendship has definitely changed over the years from when I was 18 to now being 27. So 9-10 years almost. I see my friends differently, and I have different friendships with different people. But something that when I was younger, it was kind of all about like the quantity over quality. So the more friends you had made you more popular, made you more desirable to other people. And you just wanted to be invited to all the parties and you wanted to be there. But now I really look for friends that are like, they're pushing me in like a healthy way, and they're expanding my mind. Like, wow, we talk so much about, and they're there for me, and they're there to support me. And just like we're having like good, deep conversations. So it goes more in depth, which is what this chart kind of talks about too, is like find those people that are touching you deeply in your heart. And something my one friend always says, she says that like for her friendships, she doesn't worry so much about how many people she can touch, but how many people she can be touched deeply by and how she can touch deeply by and stuff like that. So thinking more in depth versus quantity, I think is something that I'm really have grown and changed to look for in friendships.
And do you find that a lot of the people who you're finding that depth with are the same people who you've known since you're 18, or are you meeting new people? And
it kind of changes. There's definitely some people from when I was a kid, like I'll always have that like really core friendship with them. But there's some other people where it's just, you just kind of grow apart. And, when I was in university, like I obviously I went to the bar a lot and I partied a lot, and that's as deep as those friendships went. It was, we all go to the bar together, but there wasn't really anything that was like holding us for when we left university. We didn't have that like really deep connection that kept us there. So if they're now living, not in Kitchener-Waterloo, we don't make an effort to really go and see each other, because our whole friendship was based on like fun things, which like was great. And I needed that at that time of my life. Like I had a lot of fun with them. It's just definitely changed throughout time. And it's interesting to see those friendships change, I think. Yeah.
That's amazing. I remember back to a show a long time ago. I don't even remember what you and I were talking about. I think it was, we were talking about the give and take of a friendship, and that you have to make sure you're giving too. You have to make sure you're reaching out too. And I suspect that that's who you find out who your true friends are, the ones that you continue to reach out to, and they continue to reach out to you. And you do build that friendship that lasts.
And I agree. Yeah. And I think like also with those other friends where you like kind of distance, you become more distance with them. It's almost like a mutual understanding. At least like that's how I'm feeling. Like there's definitely times where I'm like, I miss that person and that time of my life, but it's not where I am anymore. But it's almost like this mutual understanding that like, hey, like I'll always love you, but like we're just not that like close anymore,
right.
Versus those other friends like that you have that deep connection with and that you do have a lot of give and take. It's like they're always going to be there for you. Even if you go months without talking, you come back to each other and you still have that like core friendship and it doesn't shake. If you don't go deep, then when you go away for a couple months and come back, it feels a little awkward. It feels a little bit like small talk, versus with those friends you really build those friendships with, they come back and it feels normal. And I think that's important to find in your life.
A big part of this show, I know I'm trying something futile, which is trying to help younger people like your age, not make the mistakes that I made throughout the decades. And I just to give you a heads up, like I did make a mistake. I didn't reach out to some friends who were really good friends back in the time, and you just grow apart. And then at a certain point, you don't reconnect. So I just love your idea, and I hope that you're able to build and keep those friendships. So we're actually burning through our time. I'd like to get a little corny and talk about time with partner. And it says, never settle for less than love, and it's the most important decision you'll ever make. It's strange. So I've been married quite a while now. How I look at things now is so much different than before we got married, and even why we got married. And honestly, like if I knew how important this would be back then, I would have been so nervous. Like I would have been way more nervous asking Sheila to marry me and thinking about getting married, because it turned out to be so much more amazing than I thought. And also, so the stress would have been, I'm going to lose all that stuff. So a couple of points. I was actually, before I saw this post, I was thinking a little bit about this on my run today. People sometimes ask us, how did you make it work? How do you guys make it work all this time? And the truth is, I'm not even quite sure. I do have some ideas, but I know amazing people, amazing couples who went their different ways, and it had nothing to do with doing anything wrong. That's just life. So the first thing for me is you need some luck. It might be an important decision, but you need some luck, because you need to be lucky enough that you both are going to grow in the right direction, that things don't move apart. But the other thing too is it's hard at times. It's very hard work. Yeah. And there are definitely eras where things aren't firing on the cylinders, and you got to kind of commit to getting through those tough times, and that works. But I just, lately it's just been so amazing, because you get to a certain point and you realize, wow, we're still together and it's better than we ever expected. So I would just, I would say that that's right. Like you really, really think about, is this the right person? And am I going to enjoy and love spending time with them for the rest of my life? And if you do, boy, it's so enriching.
Definitely. And like for me and David are, little fresh babies compared to you and Sheila. So we have, much to learn in our relationship. But it's like just recently, the past couple of weeks, we both kind of realized like we're just talking about it and we don't know when it happened, but we realized like we became each other's best friend. And I think that's like such an important thing too in your relationship, is to actually have that friendship under the love, because love can take you so far, but if you don't actually enjoy the person and like being with them and think of them as a friend, that's also so important, right?
Yeah, because I think a lot of times when you think about it, it's more a passion. Like you think love in the passion sense. Yeah. And as you get older, you think more about love in the friend sense. Like who do you want to go to when something went wrong and you need something, or, who do you want to celebrate with, or who, are you finding you can't tell the person something? That's probably not a good sign,
Yeah.
So I agree.
Keeping something. Yeah.
Being best friends is amazing. Okay. Well, we'll, don't want to get too sappy on this, and we're also out of time. So
I'm sure Sheila will like to listen to it though.
Oh, we'll see, I guess. But, I wanted to talk about coworkers too, but I don't think that we already ran a bit longer. So maybe we'll pick that up another day.
Sounds good.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the category of social wellness. I contacted Spectrum Waterloo Region and asked about obstacles often faced with wellness by people in the 2SL LGBTQ community. And Scott Williams said it would be beneficial to invite an Indigenous Two-Spirit person to join the conversation. And he introduced me to our guest today, Hollee George. Welcome, Hollee.
Thanks for having me.
Musco Jijiko Red Sky Woman, or Hollee George, is a Two-Spirit Anishinaabe Ikwe lesbian, wife, mother, daughter, granddaughter, sister, auntie, niece, and cousin. She's a member of the Kettle and Stony Point First Nation and the Sturgeon Clan. Hollee's academic and employment background is centered on justice, especially criminal and social justice related to Indigenous and queer people. In her roles as justice advocate, professional and traditional knowledge keeper, she centers voices of Indian residential and day school survivors like herself and family. Currently living, working, and playing on the Haldeman tract, Musco is actively involved in a variety of community organizations in the region of Waterloo. So welcome.
Miigwech.
It's really great that you can join us as we're trying to explore ways to foster social wellness. I'm going to try and give you kind of some loose topics that we can chat about, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But essentially, I'm trying to get a bit of an understanding of Two-Spirit and Indigiqueer identity, and then some of the obstacles people in your community tend to face. Where do you think we should start?
Wherever you want to. I guess first explaining, who the Two-Spirit people are is a good start.
I think so, because I did ask Scott, and Scott said it's probably better if you ask someone from that community as opposed to me trying to explain it.
Makes sense. Well, first, before we even get started, I just want to acknowledge for the listeners that as part of wellness, as part of who I am, I just want to acknowledge that I do have a smudge burning. And I do have sacred items out here that are all supposed to be helpful in making sure that the space that we're holding today is good space, has good energy, has good medicine, that we come together in a good way, in a good mind and a good heart. And I have eagle feathers present here, which are in our ways of being, knowing, and understanding is very much about, again, bringing good positive energy into the space, truth into the space. So just firstly acknowledging that I have some of those sacred items out.
Well, I appreciate that. I mentioned to you off tape that in a former interview of Clarence Kakagi, he helped me try and understand some of these concepts. And so I really appreciate you doing that.
Mm-hmm. In regards to the identity of Two-Spirit people, I would say that being Two-Spirit is much more about traditional roles and responsibilities than anything. I don't even want to use the word position, but again, traditional roles and responsibilities, because as Two-Spirit people, we are spiritually gifted people, said to be, and my teachings comes from a variety of elders and knowledge keepers, Two-Spirit and Indigiqueer knowledge keepers and elders, that we are people who are walking in two worlds at once, the physical world and the spiritual world at the same time. And our traditional roles and responsibilities are many, often healers, often mediators, the social workers in community, the justice people in community, the medicine people in community. We're able to, just on the basis of who we are, naturally fluid people are able to step into places and spaces, roles in community and family that really are positions of leadership and helping, that have historically been regarded as, all roles and responsibilities are important, but the people have really been held in high regard and with great respect, because being Two-Spirit is, again, more about traditional roles and responsibilities than it is with, who are you sleeping with, or what's your sexual orientation, or what's between your legs. It's more about, again, traditional roles and responsibilities where there's a gap because of our fluid nature, that we can step into positions that might be said to be specific to women or specific to men. That natural fluid nature is how we are able to help bring balance into the community.
You said off tape too that I could ask any question, and I'm still learning about a lot of stuff in these areas. Is what you're describing in terms of this role and the ability to be possibly a mediator or kind of see things in a different way that's helpful in all these contexts, is that something that goes back historically? From your knowledge, was it something that was passed down from generation to generation? And then when we now come up to the modern world, especially the Western world, and we have these binary concepts of man and woman, and like you said, body parts and who you like to sleep with, which seems to be pretty binary in thinking. Does that come across to the Indigenous community as odd? Putting it another way, some people in my community would be like, I don't get it. I don't get this Two-Spirit thing because we're binary. But with a history of what you're talking about, do you see the Western binary system and say, I don't get that? Where are they coming from?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense to me what you're asking. So again, the term Two-Spirit is a term that was developed, or brought forward by Dr. Myra Laramie in the 90s, and it's really a term to help other people try to understand who it is that we are. It's always about traditional roles and responsibilities, right, more than anything. And the Two-Spirit people have been in community for time immemorial. Indigenous people have been here for time immemorial. Two-Spirit people have been here time immemorial. And through the process of colonization and through the process of assimilation, Indian residential school, Indian day school, we were taught the gender binary. We were very much erased historically and boxed into the gender binary. And again, through the process of Indian residential school and Indian day school, our people have learned the gender binary. They have learned transphobia. They have learned homophobia. That was not part of our ways of being, knowing, and understanding historically. And again, those systems did a really good job at harming that dynamic and harming those, essentially erasing and taking away, banning much of our ceremonies and ways of being, knowing, and understanding. The people went underground.
Are you also saying then that, so we know that there's a lot of homophobia and transphobia, biphobia in the Western world. Are you saying that now also started to become part of Indigenous communities where it wasn't so much before? That it was something that almost kind of seeped in?
Absolutely. It was indoctrinated.
I see. So
homophobia, transphobia, indoctrinated, that fear of difference and fluidity, very prevalent in Indigenous places and spaces, in Indigenous healing and wellness spaces. Heteronormativity, transphobia, queerphobia, all the phobias are very prevalent in Indigenous communities, in Indigenous families, very much so.
In your knowledge, was it less so in say 100 years ago, 200 years ago?
I don't know if it was less so. What I do know is that we didn't understand ourselves or other people to be so rigid. We didn't understand our people to be, we were happy with people just being their authentic selves. And again, we're very much a people who honor and respect difference and fluidity and authenticity. And again, through the process of Indian residential school and Indian day school, those lifeways were beaten out of us, were stolen from us, were banned from us. It's truly an indoctrination of our own people. I would say that change is happening, though it's slow and painful, but change is happening where our people are starting to live openly, where our people are starting to unlearn and relearn. And it's difficult still in 2022 to be a Two-Spirit person in Indigenous families and Indigenous community, in Indigenous places and spaces of all kinds.
You're talking about some of the obstacles that you face. What are some that still exist then? So what are obstacles you're trying to overcome in your community right now? And are you breaking down some of the barriers and getting past some of these obstacles?
I would definitely say homophobia, transphobia, again, very prevalent in our communities. Exclusion, social exclusion in our families, in our communities. These are the impacts of Indian residential school. These are the impacts of Indian day school, right? And it's so deep. It's so deep, and people don't realize that. I mean, homophobia, queerphobia, transphobia, it all exists in, the Western world and the mainstream world. But what people don't often hear is how deep those impacts or those phobias are in our own community, because, again, of those systems and Christianity.
I have a co-host, Sammy, and we at one point talked about the fact that we were frustrated that we weren't taught and didn't learn much about residential and day schools in grade school, high school, or university. And it's only recently that we're starting to understand more about that. And I would just make the pitch again, which I did earlier, for people to learn about this so they can hear what happened, hear the truths and the things that happened. That would be a good starting point, and then, whether we can move forward with things like reconciliation and allyship. Well, I think the starting point has to be understanding what happened. And I didn't appreciate this point you're making today, which is part of the indoctrination created deeper or more obstacles for people in the indigenous community that weren't so prevalent.
What happens is, and if we can just sort of picture it in our mind's eye, is when our people came out of these systems like residential school and day school, and they've been deeply indoctrinated with Christianity and the gender binary and all the various phobias, when they came out into community, that came with them. That came back to our treaty territories. It came back to our families and our communities. And so anybody that was a two-spirit person was no longer welcome. But what I often bring to people's attention is it's not safe in white society for us, but it's also not safe in Indigenous families and communities for us either. So we're exceptionally displaced and dispossessed from our traditional teachings, customs, practices, our families, our community connections. And again, I can't stress it enough, this all comes from those systems of assimilation.
Okay, well, I think we'll leave it at that for now. For me, saying that this is something that never dawned on me. What you're explaining right now and what I'm understanding for the first time is a side of the residential and day schools that never occurred to me before. So I appreciate you helping me with that better understanding.
Yes, the two-spirit people, anybody that was gay or trans, anybody different became a target for sexual violence, for violence generally in those systems. I've had the honor and the privilege of sitting with very many two-spirit elders and residential school survivors, and they have all said that is becoming targets of violence in the system, but also following those systems. Okay.
Well, I'm glad you also did the smudge ceremony pieces, because it makes me feel better given what we're talking about and some of the experiences that I imagine people had who went through that. There's a question I ask every guest. We are a show about wellness, and we're exploring different categories of wellness in a context where we know that we don't have time to take care of all of our categories at any given time. So the question we asked, it's essentially a mini wellness check-in. Are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if you are, can you think of even one thing that you could do to foster wellness in that area?
I can tell you that nobody's ever perfectly in balance. There's always something that lags behind. But in terms of wellness, what I've been taught is that if you take care of your spirit first, all other things will come into line. Your physical wellness, your mental, emotional wellness will come into line, because we are a spirit-led people, very much so.
Can you think of an actual activity, like for one example of an activity you do to foster your spiritual wellness?
Smudging.
Right.
And smudging is a very, very simple ceremony. It's portable. You could do it, pretty much anywhere, but it's a really simple and basic way of taking care of your spiritual well-being, but also in a more practical end. The smudge and the smoke, it's actually an antibacterial, so it's a good for germs if you got stuff going on at home. But the smudge really for me is spiritual wellness, mental and emotional wellness, It is physical wellness for me as well, in the way that I can, breathe in that and smudge my home or wherever it is I need to, keep the negative energy and all those germs away as well. So it's actually a very simple ceremony, but powerful nonetheless.
Well, a couple things come to mind based on what you've said. One of them is, it's interesting because at one point, so first of all, I agree with you. You can't get perfect balance at any given point. And one of the themes that we're trying to talk about is trying to get better balance tomorrow and the day after that and next week. And it always looks a bit different depending on where you are in your life. But the other one too is I was thinking initially of trying to figure out if there's like a hierarchy of categories. And for my part, I think that physical wellness, eating healthy food, getting enough sleep, taking care of your body, that's a really central one. And all the other areas of wellness benefit from being in good physical health. But you make an excellent point about spiritual. And so I don't want to get in a debate on which one has priority, but just to say I agree with you. If you can get your spiritual wellness in better shape, it must have an impact on all the rest of the categories.
Mm-hmm. And if I had to pick, I would say that my physical wellness is probably lacking compared to everything else. But again, practice, right? Do something to help yourself along. If it's, a little bit of extra exercise, get your steps in, eat a little bit healthier. But also recognizing that Indigenous people, because of our being dispossessed from our traditional lands and territories, have limited access to a lot of the things that we used to do on the land, right? It's not so accessible. Sure, you can find places to, go out on the land, hunt, fish, trap, just spend time, but it's increasingly more difficult. We were not a sedentary people, and the foods that we ate were natural foods, organic foods, off the land, wild game, wild meat, and all of those, fruits and vegetables that are available through the land. And again, through the process of colonization, we've been dispossessed from that traditional lifestyle that was really important to physical wellness. We're just not as active as we once were.
Another truth that's very interesting, and another one I hadn't really thought about. Just before I finish off, I fallen into love with long distance running. And sometimes I like to think about what I share with people throughout history. So sometimes when I'm running, it sounds a little corny, but I think that I'm doing the same thing that somebody did in Africa 1,000 years ago on a path. And then sometimes I think it's the same thing someone in ancient Greece was doing, who's like a messenger. And sometimes I think of an Indigenous person running in a trail in Ontario. And never occurred to me to think that where maybe they used to be able to run 100 kilometers, now they are stuck to run 20 kilometers because their land is smaller now than it was before. Just never crossed my mind.
Absolutely. Well, if you think about the physical labor of living off the land, it's significant. That keeps you in shape.
For sure.
Never mind, the health and wellness that comes from eating those good foods. They're not processed. They don't have, wild game doesn't have a lot of fat, right? Living off the land is laborious.
It is.
But it keeps you in shape. And we've become sedentary because we've been displaced from our traditional lands.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to keep talking all night, I think, but I've got to stop. But on that point too, another one of our episodes, we talked about the fact that we have the bodies of hunters and gatherers. That's what our bodies were designed to do. And we don't do it anymore, right? So somehow we think that when our minds evolved and we got machinery, that somehow our bodies don't need to do the kind of movements, the hard work that you're talking about, bending over and picking up berries or hunting animals and eating game and all that stuff. So I agree with you again on that we're hunters and gatherers, and it's unfortunate that we've lost the environment to act in that way. But anyway, look, I really appreciate your time. This has been really fascinating, and I thank you for joining us.
Well, you're very welcome anytime. As long as I made sense.
You did. You did.
and welcome to another installment of the Adventures of the Starving Artist. Of the many hats that I wear, and there are many, one of my favorites is writing for other musicians. It's fun because I get to explore all different kinds of genres that I might not otherwise try, and I get to jump instruments all the time. You know, in one day I might go from playing bass to keys to a synth part, and they might be entirely different genres from one another. The variety is, I like that. You know, they say variety is the spice of life. I tend to agree with this case. What I want to tell you about today is kind of how that works. It occurs to me that not everybody gets to try this out, so here's a little insight into the process. This week she's actually a former student of mine, which is really cool, but I had someone reach out to me and ask if I would be interested in doing some piano parts for some of her upcoming songs. Now, these are songs that she's been sitting on for a while, some of them for months, and I definitely know how that goes. You get to a point where you're sitting on them for so long, you're not sure if you ever want to do something with them. Is it good enough? Do I still like it? Have I outgrown it? All that sort of stuff. So she's trying to push it forward and approached me for some piano parts. So I said, sure, send over what you have and I'll see what I come up with. So she sent over 3 demos, and they're all similar style, which is great. There's consistency there. But they are all different enough from one another that there's a lot of room to play, which is great. So one of them, and I'm going to keep the names under wraps for now just because nothing is set in stone, first of all. But yeah, just for now, under wraps. Anyway, let's call it Song 3. Song 3 of the 3 that she sent happened to be my favorite, just out of personal taste. And so I started with that one. And in the demo track she had sent over, she had her melody and vocals, which are spectacular, just throwing that out there, set on top of a very simple piano loop. Let's call it a loop. And this loop was like bare bones simple. It was 2 chords that bounced back and forth between one another with one note as like a sort of transition for rhythm. That was it. And so I took that, I listened through her lyrics and her melody, and basically just embellished the bejeebus out of it and turned it into a full piano part instead of just 2 chords. Different motion, different rhythms. There's a moment when she's talking about, in the lyrics, blowing down a house of cards. And so, you know, I made the piano part sort of tinkle from high down to low as if the cards were falling down, and other approaches like that. And tried a few different things. Some of them I didn't like. Some of them I did. Keep the ones I like. Keep rolling with it. And eventually got to something that I thought was pretty good. So I sent it back off, and she was also very happy with it, which is always good. Now, I should clarify, it doesn't always go like that. Sometimes I write something that I love, I think is awesome, and I'll send it off to be reviewed, and it doesn't quite line up with their expectations. So we don't end up using it. And that's okay, because it means I get to hang on to it for some other project. It's happened before, but this time it was a first try. Everyone was happy with it, so that's cool. When things get a little further along with this project, I'll update you on when you can find it and what it's going to be called. But for now, that's all I've got. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
We love our listeners and thanks for joining us. Please help spread the word about Let's Be Well Together podcast. Follow us and rate us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together and let your friends know about us.
Move that body like we're meant to do. Hey, John, I just realized that all that dancing that I do is actually really beneficial for relieving anxiety and stress.
I never would have connected that.
No.
Although, you know, we all have our issues. Yours isn't really being anxious.
No, that's true.
You've got, you know, some other issues, and I could, if it was flip side, I could list a whole bunch of other.
Oh, brother. Are we going to start listing
No.
issues, are we?
No, because I think I lose on that list.
But we've been reading this article and it talks about different exercises and the benefits of different exercises. So
when I see an article that looks interesting for us, I like to throw it aside and bring it to Sheila. And this one's called Power of Movement, Swim to Relieve Stress, Walk for Mental Blocks, Dance Away Anxiety. And it's by Study Finds. And I think, and it was August 7, 2022. And I think that Study Finds is a YouTube page. I'm not sure, but I can't even remember how I came across this. But it's a great article, and it shows how different kinds of physical activity help in different types of mental areas.
Yeah, really cool. So let's start with dance, because that's what I like to do. So it helps to relieve stress and anxiety. It gets your heart racing, and so it's really important to get that heart going.
Dance being a form of aerobic activity. And obviously for me, it's the running side, but it makes sense because according to this article, that kind of physical activity releases endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, noradrenaline, and all these trigger positive feelings in the brain. And, I've talked time and again, and I'll keep talking about if I don't get my aerobic exercise in.
You're miserable.
Yes.
We've realized.
Yeah, but what's kind of cool about this article, I never really thought about it in this context.
No,
I just
neither.
think exercise is good for the mind.
Yeah, and exercise, it's all the same.
Right, exactly.
Like exercise is exercise, but different exercises can do different things. So another one that they talked about was yoga.
Yoga, they say, so you get to the end of the day and you realize you haven't moved very much. Now, yoga is great all the time.
Right.
But this is also a nice context, which is you get to the end of the day, you haven't moved very much. So you do some simple stretches or yoga, and that helps you unwind and rest easier.
Yeah, depending on the type of yoga, you can do some stretching and breathing and focusing on calming the mind and coming back to the moment and being conscious of your breath.
Yeah, definitely a different
calm you
impact.
down.
A different impact than aerobics.
Okay, so now let's talk about swimming. They say swimming is really good for stress as well. You really have to focus when you're swimming.
Yeah, I never thought of that before, but it's not only exercise, but you're in water. You got to keep your stroke going properly. You got to stay afloat.
Yeah.
I can see how that really makes you come into the moment. And even, if you're doing something like the front crawl, you have to hold your breath, then breathe, you're on this routine. So that is interesting. So they tie that more to stress. That's a good point.
And walking. They talk a lot about walking in this one, this article. Waking up, you say going for a walk can do both. If you wake up energetic or non-energetic, it can help you in both ways.
I like that
Fresh air
point. You can wake up feeling great. You can wake up feeling lethargic. Either way, going for a walk is going to help.
Or if you have a mental block.
That's a good point too. Yeah, they were saying like if you're working and you kind of run into this often happens to us, right? And maybe we sleep on it. But if you're working and you're like, I just can't figure out the answer, a good thing to do is go for a walk.
Yep.
Your blood starts moving, you get oxygenated, get your brain working better. Great idea.
Yeah.
So do you want me to end by listing the 10 physical activities that most people do on a regular basis at least once a week?
Yeah.
So the ones they list: walking, stretches, cleaning. Hey, we're going to have to we'll have to do a move that body.
Oh, we have to do a move that body. I'm cleaning because I love to clean.
Gardening, which we've done.
Yep.
Team sports like football, tennis, etc. Swimming, running, which is obviously the most important of all to everyone. Squats. Squats is amazing. Squats is a great thing to do even without weights.
And the thing is you can do squats anytime.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like you can do them at your desk, or if you go to the bathroom before you go to sit down again, do 10 squats, It just works so many parts of the basic muscles in the core. It's a great thing to do. Sit to stand and jogging outside. I mean, what's the difference between... That's how important running is. Now I get it. It's not only running, but jogging outside. Oh yeah, let's end with that.
Let's end with that. There's a thought. Popped up while running. It's a bit of a heavy one today because I was thinking of my dad. Sheila and I headed up to Collingwood last weekend to spend a little time up there. We don't get much time to use the condo that we have there. We usually need to rent it out. On Friday night, we just got up there and we were just putting things away and got a note from my mom. My dad had been in the hospital for some months, and it's a long story, but he also is on dialysis, and we found out that he had decided that morning, after many twists and turns, that enough was enough and he was going to stop dialysis. And as a result of that, his doctors told him that he had days, not weeks. So that was kind of hard-hitting news, but by the same token, both Sheila and I were relieved in a way because we thought it was the right decision. We totally understood why he would make that decision. So then the question is how we could best support him. We decided to go back home the next day. We had some things we had to deal with in the morning to be able to do that. And I was out for my run. That's where this running pop-up comes in. I just started to think of so many things. At first, I'm not going to say negative thoughts, but kind of thoughts of doubt. I wondered if I had spent enough time with him in the last few years. I wondered if I had done a good enough job expressing the things I thought about him, because maybe it's an excuse to say that in our society, you're so-called manly by keeping your emotions to yourself, whether that's good, bad, or whatever. I do think that both of us kind of had that tendency. My dad's kind of old school. He doesn't always say what he's thinking, and I don't always say what I'm thinking. So, did I tell him enough that I loved him, or how much he meant to me, or what he did for me? I hope I did. That's what was going through my head. And then it all just washed away. I had a really nice run because I was thinking of so many good times that we had together. So many things he did for me, and he did for my family, and for everybody, really. Smiles and laughs. The old dad jokes he was notorious for. Most of them were terrible. They were so bad they were actually funny. He patted me on the back when things went wrong, especially as a kid after, say, a sporting event. He was always there to help with the kids when need be. I could go on and on, but the point was I had a really nice run because I was thinking of all these amazing things. And then toward the end, though, I was a bit worried because when you go off dialysis, there are different things that can happen. And I was a little concerned about how his body would react in that scenario. I just hoped for the best. I didn't have any information, and I had a really pensive run. And then that took me to Saturday. We did end up going home, and I got to see Dad in hospital, me and Sheila. My mom was there too. And I had a wonderful talk with him, just an amazing talk. And I did express myself. I spoke from the heart and told him the things that I wanted and needed to. And even though he had a kind of a raspy, quiet voice, he told me some wonderful things too. By coincidence, the palliative care doctor came in while we were there to explain what could happen. The overview was that there was a good chance he would just slip into a sleep and not wake up and peacefully pass from this world. So that's what he had 2 thumbs up saying, yeah, that's what I want. And of course, that's what we wanted as well. He determined soon after, I think the next day, that he'd prefer to go to a hospice if he could, and arrangements were made. And so then the family made a schedule, and we were all going to visit him on different days. And so Sheila and I were going to drop by on Tuesday, and he went into the hospice on Monday. On Tuesday morning, around 6 a.m, he had fallen asleep, and he died peacefully, holding my sister's hand. She had this intuition that she should stay there overnight on Monday, and it turned out that she was right. So it turned out that I didn't get a chance to see him that Tuesday night, and that my last meeting with him was that wonderful conversation that we had, and had the peace of mind of knowing that it wasn't a struggle at the end and that things were peaceful, and that made a big difference to me. And then I'll just finish with this thought. I don't know for sure, but I think this whole concept of building resilience, building up different areas of wellness is helping me through this situation, which probably means it will help me through other situations as well. And that theory of the shields is that if we build up areas of social wellness and physical wellness and others, the other areas, then when we are faced with a difficult situation, we're a little bit more resilient and it's a little bit easier to get through it. And so, for example, if I just think about this one and my different areas of wellness, some things that jump out at me include social. And I definitely feel the love and support from family and friends, which has been a big help. On the physical side, I think physical wellness helps in every situation we face. I can't explain exactly how it did in this situation, but everything from my breath, being able to do calm breathing and being in good physical shape is useful. On the mental and emotional side, I have been working to be more expressive, to be true to myself and to express myself. And I think that's why my last conversation was so wonderful. And I now have that for the rest of my life, knowing that we had that moment. It does feel special. And on the intellectual side, I was able to, I'm a curious person and I've educated myself to the best I can. And I keep doing that. And I'll always do that. And I think that helped when I was talking to the palliative care doctor and had questions about what to expect. And I think in turn that helped my dad be more at peace because he was anxious that he would go through a lot of pain or experience other things that he wanted to avoid. And I think the discussion with that doctor helped. And I could go on, but my running pop-up today, it started with that run on Saturday and now it's Wednesday and I'm still thinking lots of stuff. And I'm very grateful for the support we've gotten from people, especially the people who are sending support to my mom who could really use it right now. And now it's time to say goodbye, Dad. I love you. It's me. Am I?
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
Here we go again, droning on about our trip to London.
Here we are, yeah. Just for a little while.
So another really nice surprise.
Yes.
And it was seeing a show.
Yeah.
So let me set the stage.
You set the stage.
We had this thing called a London Pass, which got us access to a lot of the touristy type stuff. Mm-hmm. You don't have to get tickets at each place. This gets you in a whole bunch of places.
Which was really awesome.
And a couple things on the list were a 1 day on a hop on, hop off bus, and also 1 day on an Uber boat, which is kind of like a bus on the water. Mm-hmm. And it goes all, pretty far.
Yeah, it was cool.
So thinking in advance, I thought, well, the day after I run the marathon, I'm probably not going to want to walk around very much. I'll probably be sore. Mm-hmm. So that would be a good day to use both of those things. Yeah. So I'm sitting down more.
Yes.
And so we tried an Uber boat ride and that was kind of cool. We got some pictures from the water.
Yep.
And then I said to Sheila, I'm actually feeling a lot better than I expected to. I was a bit stiff in the morning, but as I wandered around, I started to feel a little bit better.
Yeah, I think you were really good, actually.
Yeah,
moving around and energy-wise. So that was really good.
Yeah, and I was really kind of high on the experience. It was so amazing. So then we got on a hop on, hop off bus, and we've done that in other cities. And what's great about it is you can use it for both seeing things and transportation. Mm-hmm. And we knew that it was eventually going to go pretty much right in front of our house.
Yeah, so we would stop there for lunch.
But of course, we went on this kind of crazy circuitous route.
Yes.
And it was taking forever. And we were starving.
Yeah, because at this point, it was like 2:30 or something, right? And we're like, when are we going to get home? Because, I don't know, imagine that we were going 30 kilometers. I think we went 5.
Yeah, like that may be exaggeration, but it's right.
It felt like that,
We had a long way to go. And so then we got kind of stuck in a traffic jam. And Sheila's like,
let's get off this bus.
Let's get off this bus. So, and meanwhile, for the last few days, so we had seen one show while we were in London, and it was great. But Sheila loves shows, and I knew in the back of my mind she wished she could have seen another show.
Right, and the last time I was in London, when I was with Elise, we got cheap tickets and we saw Spamalot. Right. And so I really wanted to try and find some cheap tickets wherever this booth was. I couldn't remember. But I'm like, John, there's a cheap ticket booth somewhere here in London.
And so we were Googling it and we could never really figure it out.
Well, I didn't know the name of it.
But then there was something about Leicester Square. Mm-hmm. And just before we gave up on the bus, you're listening to headphones, it's telling you where you are. It says, in front of you is Leicester Square. And then we turned. So we got off the bus and I said, hey, Sheila, I think we're close to Leicester Square. And if there may be a ticket booth here, why don't we kind of wander around and see if we can find it?
Yeah. So I said, okay, let's do it. We found it. So we went up there and there was basically only 2 shows that were in our realm of interest.
Yeah, like kind of in terms of the price range and the interest level, because there was only maybe 10 options of last minute tickets.
And one of them was like a murder mystery type of show. And then the other one was Dear Evan Hansen. And I've heard wonderful things about Dear Evan Hansen, but basically people have just told me it's amazing. It's great. It's awesome. Oh, it was like one of my favorites, but I didn't know anything about it.
And I just had this vague recollection that it had been out, like maybe a movie or something.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear great things. Like,
right.
So I was pretty ambivalent.
Right. He wasn't overly excited about it, but I was. So, and then she said, well, we have $30, no, sorry, not $30, 30 pounds, a ticket, and it's a box seat. So I was like, oh, I hate box seats. But John was like, I've never stayed in a box seat. I've never sat in a box seat. So I'm like, okay, well, that's great because I want to see the show and you can have a box experience. So let's do it.
Yeah. And it turned out to be absolutely amazing. Like it was kind of a nice little cherry on top of the trip.
It was amazing. The singing was just phenomenal. There was no dancing, but the singing of all the cast members, and I think there was only like 7 cast members. And the show was so good. I was crying a lot. But tell them about our box seat, John.
Sure. Okay, I'll do that. So, a box seat is a trade-off because you don't see the whole stage for sure.
You're on one side.
But we were on the left side of the stage and we were the box seat.
That's stage left, everyone.
Sorry. Is it though? But
No. We were on the left side, so it's stage right.
Thank you. I thought that. So this was the one that was just above the stage. So, and I was like sitting right beside everybody, what they were doing. And like, so for example, there was one part where Evan Hansen was singing a fairly important song. I felt like I could just reach out and touch him if I wanted to. That's how close it was.
And then so close.
And I felt guilty because we had such cheap tickets and I'm like right there looking at the guy and I look over, like I look to my right and it was almost like we were looking out from stage at so many people.
It felt like we were on stage, like, cause that's kind of what it feels like. I almost felt like at some points the lights were shining on us, because we were so close to the stage.
So the main point for me for this little clip today is how wonderful it can be to be spontaneous.
Yes.
To go with the flow, both in terms of getting a ticket when you weren't planning and picking a show you might not like. And so let me just say a quick thing about why I love the show. So I'm always complaining to Sheila when it comes to stage productions. I'm like, why do we have to watch a superhero show?
Right.
Why do we have to watch a classic movie that we already know?
Right.
That's just on stage.
Right.
Or a Disney thing on stage. No offense, Disney. Or just, somebody slices together a whole bunch of music from a group and turns it into a story. Like, where is the creativity?
Right. He doesn't.
Isn't anyone writing plays? Isn't anyone writing things?
And side note, I really like those. So
those things that I don't like.
Yes.
Yes, that's true. So I'm just a curmudgeon. But this was really, really interesting. And what I also really liked about it didn't have a perfect ending.
No.
It wasn't the perfect happy ending.
No.
And so I left there feeling like really moved.
Yeah.
I really got into a lot of what they were doing on the emotional side.
Incredibly relatable.
And I left going,
characters.
You know what? There's still work to do.
Wow.
Life just doesn't become perfect. You do your best and you take steps forward. And even then you still have work to do when you're done.
Yep.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
It's sign-off time, and Elise is here. Hi, everyone. It's Elise.
Hi.
I'm here in Collingwood enjoying some nice outdoor and relaxation time, and I thought I'd pop in for a cameo. So I'm going to send it off to Sheila. Sheila, what are you up to this week?
It has been a busy week for us, the Webster household. So for me, it didn't even seem like a week. It seemed like 2 days, just a day of trying to figure everything out. And then we had funeral. So lots of funeral things. And we were just trying to work and do all of that. So we actually, after the funeral, came up to the cottage or the condo for a few days. So that is hopefully some rest and relaxation. I'm looking forward to that. And then getting back to some regular, hopefully, routines. I feel like I haven't exercised for a month. Though that's not true, but I just feel like I'd like to get moving and eat better and get more into those routines. So that's what's going on with me. What about you, John?
I'm definitely with you on the last point. I still have to get in that direction. I'm going to keep trying and eventually do it.
Yeah.
You're right. It's been a super busy week. I talked a lot on the running pop-up today about some of the things I thought about. And I learned a lot about arranging a funeral, which I didn't know anything about before, and that type of stuff. I did my first eulogy, which was an interesting experience.
It was very good, John. You did a great job.
Well, thank you for that. So that's kind of it. I'm not going to go on more about that. The one thing I do say, though, is, wow, the support from people makes such a huge difference. And, the whole time this is going on, every time I pick up my phone, it's like 5 more emails, 10 more emails. And it was really stressing me out, but people at work jumped in and helped and made sure that they also said, hey, John, focus on the right things right now.
Take some time.
And even, so we're doing this on a Sunday night, and I was scheduled to have meetings in Toronto with the team I work with all day Monday. And I was going to do it, but they just sent a note saying, hey, think about whether that's the right thing to do. And I am going to take some downtime now. So, just thanks everybody and the people I work with, and I'm getting through this. And what about you, Sammy? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. I have had a pretty busy week. David's been homesick all week. With him homesick, he also is like, hey, want to hang out? And I'm
watch
like,
a movie?
I gotta work a little bit. Yeah, I'm like, you can play it in the background, but I'm going to be working. So yeah, it's dealing with that. That's okay. And then we had the Underdog Dance Corp fundraiser this past week. So that was a lot of fun. And then, I had a piece in there as like a group of hip hoppers, and none of them have ever done hip hop before. So seeing them like work so hard and have so much confidence on stage, I was like so proud of them. And they're all like older than me, but I was like, you guys did so good. Like I was just so proud seeing like adults putting themselves out there, like just dancing and having so much fun. And, as a competitive dancer, you get a little nervous. Like I didn't even want to go on stage because I was like, I'm not going to be good enough, but for someone who's never danced before, they just go out there, they kill it. And I was like, that was awesome. So yeah, I had a pretty good week.
Excellent.
I
think you're holding out on us, Sammy. Don't you have, Sheila told me something about a new business or something. What's going on?
Yes, I was holding out on you. I wanted to see if you'd ask about it. No, so me and 2 of my very close friends who also work in social media, Melissa works in graphic design, and my friend Amanda Paul, she works in social media. And we went into this photo shoot thing like a year ago, maybe like a little bit less than a year ago, and started talking about this idea of creating like a branding business for people that kind of don't know what to do or how to brand themselves. So we came up with the idea for the Clueless Collective. So it's kind of like, we're your team to help you be a little bit less clueless about your brand, whether it's like social media, events, logo design, website design, anything really. We're really open to just trying out a little bit of everything. And then our goal would be to, at some point, have our own branding like studio where we could set it up for different photo shoots, have different like local events, and really like just a space for like all creative people to come and be creative. So that's the business.
Well, let me ask you 3 questions. 1, how does somebody find you? 2, is it for individuals and companies? And 3, will you do an interview with me about this sometime? I just think it's so cool because like this is kind of right in the wheelhouse of what we're talking about, where someone's right at the start of some new endeavor and how that affects balance and stuff like that. So I should let you answer.
So you can definitely find us on Instagram. It's just at the Clueless Collective. And then TikTok, we don't have any content up yet, but we do have our TikTok starting. It's just the Clueless Co. I could definitely do an interview with you about it for sure. And what was your other question?
The other one was whether it's for like an individual, like if John Webster wants a social presence, or is it for companies 100%. Or both?
Yeah, it's kind of for anybody. It's for companies, it's for individuals. So if you want to like brand yourself, if you're like, I want to be more seen on social media, maybe you want to be connected with different companies, because influencer marketing is very big right now, where basically people will, or user generated content, which is, like a regular person like me on Instagram. I want to start working with a brand and start putting, being like, oh, I tried this candle, and giving your review and kind of working with the brand. And it helps the brand then get more content for their product, for their page by using people that actually use the product. So yeah, it could really be for anyone. We want to kind of like work with more like local businesses, but we're really open to anything. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, one of my biggest problems right now is every time I meet somebody with anything interesting that could be on the show, I want to interview them. I'm going to have to resist that right now.
Yeah.
Because this is sign off. But thanks, Sammy. And we're so excited and good luck with it. And thanks everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast and we'll join us again next week. Bye for now.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.